What up, though? Racist collectibles at Pence Antique Mall debated. Seth Slaball, Muncie Star Press. This is July 24th, 2020, Muncie, Indiana. On her Facebook page, Janine Lee Lake recently posted photographs of racist collectibles she says she photographed at U.S. Rep. Greg Pence's Antique Mall. The objects included antique coin banks of black males with very dark skin, oversized red lips, and bulging eyeballs, as well as banks of what Collectors Weekly calls one of the most enduring black stereotypes, Mammy, a motherly and overweight black woman who is visibly happy in her subservient position. Lake, a Democrat and an African American running for Republican Pence's seat in Congress, called out the congressman and his wife, Denise, who runs the mall for profiting from hate. Profiting from hate. Mammy, a motherly and overweight black woman who is visibly happy in her subservient position, or she's visibly happy at her job or doing her job. I've met quite a few so-called blacks or African Americans, properly American Indians, who are, in fact, visibly happy in their, quote, subservient, end quote, position. Lake, a Democrat and an African American, which there is no such thing as an African American, so I assume that Lake is an American, running for Republican Pence's seat in Congress, called out the congressman and his wife, Denise, who runs the mall for profiting from hate. They run the mall for profiting from hate. I've never been to the mall, but I would go out on a limb and say that their intentions are not to profit from hate. That set off a debate on Facebook, of course. Pence defenders said that if you do not like what is offered, don't friggin' shop there. It's history. These items are found in all antique malls, not just the mall you're attacking for political reasons. Be upset with the merchants themselves who are selling such items. They are antique collectibles sold in a free democratic society where we have freedom of choice. I would say, why be upset at the merchants for selling the memorabilia or the statues or collectibles? If you don't like the collectibles, don't buy them. And these items are worth a lot of money and amazingly are highly collectible by Black America, of course. Because some people don't shy away from historical artifacts, historical events. Pence is distancing himself from the controversy, of course, all political. As you may know, Congressman Pence is not engaged in the active management of the Exit 76 Antique Mall, spokesperson Millie Lothian said of the mall on Interstate 65 at Edinburgh. This article is from usatoday.com. One person commented on Facebook referring to the mall. Looks like they're not requiring masks inside either. They clearly don't care about people's immediate safety. So why would they give a damn about racism? Well, if they required a mask, that would mean they would require you to cover your breathing system. And since you seem to be a proponent of covering your breathing system, I would say that you clearly don't care about your own safety. And if you have children, I'm pretty sure you cover up your children's breathing systems as well. And let's just get real crazy here. I'm pretty sure you follow the CDC's immunization schedule as well. Let's shake it. Another person who reported he was a frequent visitor to the mall, said of the racist memorabilia that after George Floyd, oh, here we go, protests broke out, I found these everywhere because maybe you were looking, most of which were brought out to the front of the booths to make sure they were visible, as if they thought it was funny during the current events. This issue may be fodder for desktop activists on Facebook on both sides, but I am not sure this will be enough to shock or sway an undecided voter, given the degree of separation between Rep. Pence and the items and the fact it is an antique store selling them. Chad Kinsella, an assistant professor of political science at Ball State University, told the Star Press. Lake has been very active in the recent BLM movement, which is part of her campaign. Of course it is. So it makes sense to see if she can tie Rep. Pence to something unsavory related to racism to draw a clear distinction between the two, Kinsella went on. However, I am not sure this is the smoking gun. I would guess that Rep. Pence has little to do with the day-to-day operations of the mall. Lake's position on the row after row of offensive objects she says saw at Pence's mall is that they were manufactured in the spirit of bigotry and racism and were meant to demean and degrade, not to edify or encourage or enrich, but solely to make a mockery of black people, she said in a phone interview. I've not talked to any black person who feels good about it. I would venture to say that you have never spoken with a black person because there's no such thing. And also, I think it would be beneficial if she told us who actually made the memorabilia. I'd like to know who actually made the memorabilia. And such items continue to be produced, she said, noting that one of the black dolls she saw was wearing a brand new watermelon dress. Watermelon. Oh, that wonderful fruit. That wonderful fruit, when eaten, is quenching to the thirst, as well as contain fresh, real water. What's the problem with watermelon? It reminds me of monkeys. You call a nigga a monkey and they lose their mind. What's wrong with monkeys? What is wrong with a watermelon dress? Who don't eat watermelon? You know what? I would say that these things aren't necessarily meant to be racist. I would say that it's flattery, that it's reverence, that it's giving homage to the people who taught you what was healthful, what was good, what was soil food, what was soul food. Sometimes known as black memorabilia or black Americana, which there's no such thing as a black American, Lake sees it as plantation collectibles that promote slavery. Let's take this sentence and kind of dissect it. What is a plantation? A place where planting happens. Who owned plantations? Well, all manner of people owned plantations, but your family possibly owned a place where planting happened. But you wouldn't know that if you didn't take the time to do the meticulous genealogy that would show you who your family was and what they were doing at a particular time. Lake sees it as plantation collectibles that promote slavery. Well, what are some of the words that are synonymous with slavery? Work, labor, employment. She says she learned that at least 4 people had complained about racist memorabilia and Confederate flags in Pence's mall to no avail prior to 2018 before he took a seat in Congress. Confederate flags, see? If you leave it to these so-called blacks, they will give all your stuff away. They will give foreigners all your stuff, and they will give them credit for creating your stuff. Look, this show isn't about a Confederate flag. I have a show that kind of touches on the Confederate flag, but this isn't about that. Sometimes you have to do things and you have to do homework. This ain't school, it's far from it. But the Confederate flag, homework. This was brought to our attention by constituents in the 6th District who messaged us about these horrific things they saw. Horrific things they saw. Oh my God, like a horror movie. Friday the 13th type shit. Said Lake campaign manager. Lake's campaign manager is speaking for her. Lori Morgan referring to why her candidate became involved in the issue. See, so far we've seen Lake. We've seen demean and degrade, plantation, promote slavery, Confederate flag, campaign manager, candidate. One of the 4 was Margaret Lowe, a Methodist pastor from Greensburg. Lowe says she and her sister complained to the manager of the Edinburgh Mall about racist collectibles and Confederate flags and was told such merchandise sold well and nothing could be done about it. Amen. Gonna come in my store and tell me what I could sell? Out of here. Black memorabilia frequently reflects racist ideas about black people through offensive and dehumanizing caricatures, such as male savages or brutes, subservient toms and mammies, sexualized Jezebels, pickaninny children. Most of these featured the same physical traits: very dark skin, oversized red lips, and bulging eyeballs, Collectors Weekly said in a report. Black memorabilia. No such thing as black people. No such thing as a black human frequently reflects racist ideas about black people. No such thing as black humans through offensive and dehumanizing caricatures. I would say that offensive and dehumanizing is someone calling you black. Moreover, you calling yourself black. But not all black memorabilia is racist. Of course, the black memorabilia that they approve of probably isn't racist. The online antiques resource went on in the report. For example, highly valued black memorabilia includes comic books that told the story of Dr. Martin Luther King, newspaper clippings covering Rosa Parks' trial, silver spoons, decorative plates, and ceramic figurines commemorating icons like Frederick Douglass and Malcolm X, signed photographs of Muhammad Ali, original Duke Ellington records, and Jackie Robinson baseball cards, Collectors Weekly reported. The usual suspects. These are some of the horrifying collectibles. I'm trying. I'm trying hard. All right. I'm not offended. You? The London Economic. Tory MP claims people who want racist statue removed have an unquenchable desire to be outraged. A Tory MP has caused anger by claiming people who want a racist statue removed are a loud minority with an unquenchable desire to be outraged. Conservative MP Siobhan Bailey made the remarks in a row over a black boy clock figure, a black child with red lips and leaf skirt. The group called Shroud Against Racism say the mechanized child which strikes a bell on the hour with the club is dehumanizing. It was made in 1774 by watchmaker John Miles, and the figure's lips are bright red and accentuated. Removing this statue or any other will not end the scourge of racism and its disappearance from our community into a museum. And its disappearance from our community into a museum could be counterproductive in the longer term. Question: who taught you about racism? Who taught you that people were racist? Who gave you your thoughts on race? My guess would be the people who look like you. You know why I say it? Because it's big business now. Racism is big business. Think about it. Think about it. People who look like you every few years always making a movie that highlights racism, or a TV show that highlights racism every few years to keep it fresh in your mind. How could it be over? How could racism end? Well, it can't. It's big business. The people who look like you have a astronomical stake in racism. Think about it. The people who pentagram, the people who star in those racist TV shows and racist movies are people who look like you. They're not oppressed. They're doing a job. They have a contract. They got paid. They didn't have to do it. Why would you do a movie about racism? Why would you include yourself? Because it's big business. Don't forget. By anti-racism groups and researchers, Shroud Against Racism said, standing with and showing solidarity and marginalized people is what decent people and communities do. Don't speak for us. That's not very decent. That's not very decent for you to take it upon yourself to determine who decent people are and call people decent based on whether or not they act according to how you think people should act. It is a degrading depiction of a black enslaved child. So far, we haven't seen the depiction or the clock, the black boy clock. But one thing one thing I'll say is that it's a black boy clock. It is a degrading depiction of a black enslaved child. How do you tell whether someone is enslaved if it's just a depiction of a black boy? If it's a depiction of a black girl, we know it's no such thing as a black. But for the purposes of this conversation, I'm reading the article, and it's a picture of a child. How does one determine whether that child is enslaved or not? Based on the fact that the figure is just of a child. Why is it that if there was an Anglo-Saxon child, an Anglo-Saxon clock, and it was called the white boy clock, would they also add that that white child was enslaved? There's no basis. There's no foundation to stand on. It is a degrading depiction of a black enslaved child next to a school looking down on the people of Stroud. Created by watchmaker John Miles in 1774, Black Boy Clock depicts a racist stereotype of a black child with bright red lips, dressed in a leaf skirt and holding a club. Dan Guthrie from Shroud. Here we have it. This is a picture of the black boy clock. The black boy has, shorty got a baseball bat. He has what appears to be tobacco leaf kilt on top of another kilt. He has American Indians' signature hoop gold earrings. And he got a natural. They said this was a depiction of an enslaved black boy. Now, this has to make you think. The very people who are calling slave or who are calling racism, shouting racism, they are the racists themselves. Why would anyone say that this boy that we're looking at on the screen is enslaved? What makes him enslaved? First of all, it's a clock. It's not a real human. We know that. But why would someone think that this boy is enslaved? You know why? You know why? To keep the lie alive. Because if you see this boy with a natural gold hoop earrings, symbolic of American Indians, a tobacco leaf kilt? If you think of this boy as a slave, then guess what? You want to get that picture out of your mind. You don't want to revisit that picture. Most of all, you will never make the connection that the so-called Black American, the so-called African American, is the American Indian. As a person of color, walking past it all this time has made me feel incredibly uncomfortable in the place that I call home, a bygone relic of the transatlantic slave trade looking down at me and reminding me of the way that black bodies were treated in that period of time. Think about this. Think about what this adult, this person of color, this is a man or a woman calling themselves a person of color. They didn't say that they were Anglo-Saxon or American or Chinese or German. They said they were a person of color. What human being is a person of color? Did this person of color's first, second, third, fourth, fifth great grandparents and relatives call themselves people of color? Or did they call themselves what they were? Did they associate themselves with the soil portion that they sprouted up from? Think about this. You're seeing this black boy clock, and this person says, walking past it all this time has made me feel incredibly uncomfortable in the place that I call home, a bygone relic of the transatlantic slave trade looking down at me, reminding me of the way that black bodies were treated in that period of time. What about this black boy makes you think of a slave trade? It's a little boy with a baseball bat hitting a bell. What makes this person think of a slave trade? Yikes. It's just plain offensive. Working out what happens next to this statue will not end racism locally, nationally, or beyond. Of course, it's big business, but it will be the beginning of a journey that we all need to be involved with to create a more equitable society. No, we all don't need to be involved in the sheer idea that someone would say that we all need to be involved in. It's disgusting. Don't tell me what I need to be involved in. I would prefer to be left alone. Yeah, left alone. This is very difficult for people. The Runnymede Trust, a leading independent race equality think tank, said the statue helps fuel everyday racism and gives the impression that Britain tolerates racist objects and stereotypes. This is from Google. This is a AI overview. I presented a question, and this is the answer. It's an unbiased answer. As long as you ask the question, you have to ask the question accurately in order to get the unbiased response. The Google AI overview says, yes, the black boy clock is a cigar store Indian. properly American Indian, a figure that was often placed in front of cigar shops to indicate that tobacco was sold there. And they did it all over the world. They did it in Germany. They did it in Europe, because they wanted you to know where they got the tobacco from the American Indians, which mean it's the highest quality, which means it comes from the place where tobacco is indigenous to. Yes, the Black Boy Clock is a cigar store Indian, a figure that was often placed in front of cigar shops to indicate that tobacco was sold there. The figures were often called Black Boys or Virginians. How many of y'all Virginians out there? How many of y'all Virginia Indians out there? The figures were often called Black Boys or Virginians because the early carvings were made by Europeans who had never seen a Native American or properly an American Indian. The Europeans had never seen an American Indian. They carved what they saw, and they tell us that Europeans did it, and that doesn't mean we know what their complexion was. And I'm pretty sure not all European. I'm pretty sure all the cigar store Indians weren't just carved by Europeans. The cigar store Indian was a symbol of the introduction of tobacco to Europeans by American Indians. The figures were often depicted with feathered headdresses and kilts made of tobacco. Of course. The figures eventually became more authentic and Indian in appearance. They eventually became whitewashed. They eventually became politically correct, which means the figures eventually became genocided and erased from your story. The figures eventually became more authentic and Indian in appearance. So we have authentic and we have Indian in appearance, both within quotation marks. Quotation marks around a word can indicate that the word is being used ironically, sarcastically, or to emphasize it. The figures were used to advertise tobacco products, especially in areas with large non-English speaking populations. The figures fell out of popularity due to several factors, including restrictions on tobacco advertising and increased racial sensitivity. So the people who look like you wanted to erase your story as well as theirs. Well, how would they give you a new story? How would racism become big business if they didn't erase you and send your mind somewhere else? Today, cigar store Indians are considered folk art and can be found in museums or in private collections, and not your private collection because you don't want it. You would rather someone else hold all the artifacts of your story and in museums. You don't even want to put it in your museum. You don't even want to create a museum and put the artifact in your museum to talk about and tell about your story because you want to separate yourself from that story. You want to separate yourself from that story by giving us another story, by giving us the 12 years a slave and the running from Massa story and the shucking and jiving and scared and stuttering and stumbling over your feet story. You want to give us the story that all of our people were always victims and they never fought and they was weak. You are the enemy. Not this black boy statue. If I could afford it, it would sit on my porch. Don't remove it. Keep it there. At least somewhere. Somebody want to acknowledge the American Indian. Somebody want to acknowledge the products that the American Indians sold or traded were of the best quality. Somebody want to acknowledge the nigger. They said this, the person said they walk past this every day and it reminds them of the transatlantic slave story. It reminds them of a fictitious story. Wow. Do the right thing.